live stream, Square and Compass Promotions. I do these streams every Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern, where we talk about Freemasonry. Today, I figured I would talk about, amongst other things, the speech from the throne. I do think there's some interesting things we can learn from that speech from the throne as it relates to Freemasonry. Because, when don't I bring up Freemasonry? But that is for later. As always, this first hour, just hang out, see what people want to chat about, want to talk about, anything related to Freemasonry, any thoughts on Freemasonry, positive, negative, or neutral, let me know. And please, if you're joining, as always, take a moment to hit that like button, take a moment to hit that subscribe button, jump in the chat, say hello. I hope you're having a great Tuesday. If you are joining me from the States, long weekend is over, so you're back to work, back to the quote unquote real world, but I do hope you're having a great day. And if you did not get the long weekend this weekend, if you're in Canada, got the long weekend last weekend, and I just hope you're having a great Tuesday. But as always, the first hour, we just wait, we see who finds us and what they want to talk about. So there's no rush at all. Please take a moment, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let me know what you want to chat about the first hour of this stream. The second hour, speech from the throne, what I thought of it, more particularly where I think we in Freemasonry can kind of take from it, or what I think we can take from it, hopefully. Because, I am definitely a big believer in the idea that we as Freemasons should, as much as we possibly can, try to pay attention to and hopefully, pay attention to everything, pay attention to what's happening in the world, and hopefully, as part of that, try to adapt accordingly. Jack is here. Welcome, Jack. Thank you for being here. Cole Haley, quick question. How common are the staircases in the lodge room up north? Up north, I assume you mean Canada? It depends on the building. It depends on the lodge room itself and the building in which it's built. Normally, or do you mean the winding stairs? I'm not quite sure. If you mean just staircases architecturally, just depends on the building you're in. I've been to some buildings where, even in like Detroit, for example, where the lodge room itself has a staircase going up to a second floor or a balcony, for a time when Freemasonry was much more prevalent and you had so many more people, you needed all the space. And so you kind of had to have stairways in the lodge rooms. Oh, the winding stairs? It's part of the second degree. So common, at least in Ontario, right? The lecture. Now, if you're talking about specifically, from what I understand, it's called the Winding Stairs lecture. That is something, to my understanding, not an emulation ritual. That's something more on the Preston Webb side of things you see in the States. But the symbolism of the winding staircase is a common symbol, particularly in the second degree in Freemasonry. Not exclusively, but particularly. If that answers your question, Cole, I hope it did. I hope, as always, everybody watching this will be so kind as to hit the like button and subscribe button. Let me know how it's going. And if there's anything, again, questions you have, comments, thoughts, as always with this stream, the first hour is just taking questions and chatting and hanging out. The second hour is where we talk about specific topics and specific subjects. So let's give it a bit of time, see who joins. I hope I was able to answer your question, Cole. And let me know how you're doing. And welcome everybody who's joining us. Yeah, well, it is second degree, but the actual lecture is different. I've seen the second degree lecture in, I think it was in Texas, in a few different spots in the States. I've seen the entire second degree in a few different spots in the States, and there is that lecture, which is different than what we have here, but the symbolism of the winding stairs is in Canada, is up north. Um, so I think it just depends again on like that's the thing. I always talk to people about this when it comes to Masonic ritual, right? A lot of people, especially conspiracy theorists, tend to think ritual is the same everywhere. But it's not, right? The beautiful thing about Freemasonry is there's a commonality of purpose, a commonality of intent, but there are differences between the ritual. Sometimes those differences are actually just the language it's being performed in. You have ritual being performed in Japanese, in Spanish, in English, obviously, in French, all around the world, in Portuguese. But then also there's difference in the actual content of the lectures themselves. But I loved my time in Texas. I've been there a few times. Dallas, Fort Worth, Gonzales, and all of those spots are absolutely amazing. Texas is a great state. As is, the United States a great country. I know there's some tensions right now for understandable reasons. I love Canada. Canada is the greatest country in the world. But part of the reason we are the greatest country in the world is because we have the greatest neighbors in the world. I truly believe that. So I hope you are doing well. Please take a moment, if you are just joining, to jump in the chat, say hello. We are chatting about Freemasonry, as I do every Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. First hour, we're ready to see who joins us and what it is that you guys want to chat about when it comes to Freemasonry. Any thoughts you have on it, positive, negative, or neutral, let me know. Second hour, we're going to specific topics. Private. Are you saying Freemasonry is private? Because Freemasonry, elements of Freemasonry is private, but it is still at the end of the day a civic organization, and I'm proud to talk about it. Terrifier is on. I mean, I can talk about women in Freemasonry and the Order of Women Freemasons, which is a very important group and very important part of the Masonic family. I can talk about Order of Eastern Star, which is a group for men and women. There's co-masonry floating around out there. I will tell you, you say what kind of girls you dig. How about hit the like and subscribe button, and then I will tell you my first movie crush. I saw it. I watched it, actually. I liked the throne speech. I thought it was very, very good. I thought it was really, really well done. I liked the speech a lot. I was going to talk about it in the second hour, some ideas I got from it and some possible connections or some things that Freemasonry can take away from it. But for now, that is hour number 2. Hour number 1, we wait to see who finds us and what it is they want to chat about. I've actually got the throne speech here. I'm going to repost it on my Twitter. But thank you, everybody who is joining. As always, we're going to give it a bit of time. See who finds us, what they want to chat about, what they want to talk about. Please take a moment, if you are just joining, hit the like and subscribe button. This is, though, the first hour, so it's just waiting for the audience. And the second hour is when we'll start talking about specific topics. Good evening, or I guess good afternoon, technically, Courtney. Thank you for being here. I hope that you are doing well. But I thought he did a good job. I like that last line. The true north is indeed strong and free, which I thought was a pretty good line on which to end. And don't forget, we do have our special Patreon discount deal at the moment, so let's give it a bit of time. Let's see who joins as always, and then we'll switch it over and we will start talking about the specific topic. Like I said, about an hour in. This first hour, let's just see who joins us and what it is that they want to talk about when it comes to Freemasonry. Any thoughts they have, positive, negative, or neutral? I mean, I'm a monarchist too. Honestly, I think most people are not um, monarchists or not monarchists. I think most people in Canada are just have no opinion about it one way or the other. But I personally would say I'm a fan of the monarchy. I think it's a good thing for Canada to maintain. But the beautiful thing about Canada is everybody gets their own opinion. So but for now, we're going to get a bit more time. We're going to see who else joins. Actually, I guess what we could do is maybe here, let's see if I can make that a poll question, which is, did you watch the speech from the throne in Canada? Start that poll. All right, so let's just give it a bit of time. I did see a lot of really good stuff I really enjoyed in the speech from the throne, stuff that I thought could be applicable to Freemasonry. I hope is applicable to Freemasonry. I hope that we think about as Freemasons. I've always said, Freemasons, we're not supposed to, nor should we, discuss politics or religion in lodge. I think that's a good rule. But I also think we should be paying attention to what's happening because the political, economic, social situation of a country will affect what happens in a lodge. It'll affect the number of people we have joining, the number of people coming out, and all that other good stuff. So it's important to care about that stuff and pay attention. Also, just seeing the speech in Ottawa, their own speech, made me kind of miss or nostalgic for Ottawa, a place which is a very important part of my life, which is a place where I spent some very formative years and have a lot of amazing memories, and is an absolutely beautiful and amazing city. Really is one of the best cities in the world, in my opinion. It actually made the top 100 list of best cities in the world. I think if I recall correctly, it was like number 20 something. But that is for hour number 2. For hour number 1, we're just waiting to see if anybody has any questions, any comments, any thoughts when it comes to Freemasonry, positive, negative, or neutral. What part of Canada do you enjoy the most of your time? Wow, that's a tough question. That's a good question. I mean, let me think about that. So certainly where I spend the most of my time is in Windsor, Ontario, and that's been the case since 2006 when I came here for school. So I feel like I would have to kind of pick Windsor just by default because I'm here all the time, and Windsor is a wonderful city. Doesn't get the love it deserves by any means. Um, I also really loved living in Ottawa. It is an absolutely beautiful place, beautiful city. It's got amazing parks. It was also a really important place for me formatively. It's where I moved. It's the first place I moved after I moved away from home. And so just the memories of Ottawa and that first kind of taste of freedom living on my own was really special. And it's just, working at the Home Hardware, working at the Active Living Alliance, spending my summers there, working at Parliament Hill, CRA, working for the Prime Minister. I mean, it was some pretty incredible um, memories and moments. I lived there I lived there 2 years straight and then returned for several summers. But I have a I have really incredible memories of it. So there's that. And then I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I loved Winnipeg. I thought it was a pretty incredible place as well. I didn't really appreciate it when I lived there, which I think is always the case when you grow up somewhere. You have a harder time appreciating it, at least in my experience. But when you move away and get a bit of distance and you return, you tend to appreciate it a lot more. So I guess I would say, I guess I would have to say Windsor, but Ottawa and Winnipeg are both 100% part of that list too. So, but thank you everybody who's joined so far. I hope everybody is doing well. I hope if you've done so yet, you've checked out some of my recent podcast episodes, my recent content on Medium. Yes, Folklorama. Right? There's a lot of cool stuff in Winnipeg, but again, when you live in a town, you know, familiarity breeds contempt, as they say. When you live in a town and you're familiar with it, it's harder to appreciate what it has to offer. I think it's only when you get a little bit of distance and you can look back from a place of distance, you're able to recognize the value of the place. I mean, it has the Forks, it has VJ's, a great hamburger place. It has a lot of really special things to it. So I I miss it. I'm always happy to go back. You grow to appreciate it a lot more. Welcome. If you are just joining us, thank you for being here. I am here chatting about Freemasonry. Any thoughts you have on Freemasonry, positive, negative, or neutral, I'd love to hear them. I do these streams every Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as well as posting my regular podcast episodes and other content. I have actually another YouTube short coming out tomorrow about Davignon. He was the first master of my Mother Lodge, Windsor Lodge 403, from 1883. So, 141 years ago. Cameron, is there great? I mean, in Winnipeg has great food. I would say VJ's is my favorite because it's got awesome hamburgers. So, and it's like an outdoorsy place, so it's really fun to eat there. Because it's like a shack. You go, you order your hamburger, fries, and a milkshake. You eat that on the hood of your car or at these picnic benches that they've got, or picnic tables they've got set up in the parking lot. It's just really fun, and the food is delicious. Their hamburgers are so good. So are the milkshakes there. Going to give my shout out if you get the chance to be in Winnipeg and you're looking for a place to eat, downtown on Main Street, VJ's, VJ. Check it out. Afrith, welcome back, Afrith. Thank you for joining as always. I hope that you are doing well. Please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button to everybody here who's watching. please hit that like and subscribe button. We're going to give it another hour. Then we're going to start talking about the main topic, which is the speech from the throne, and how I think Freemasons in Canada, but maybe even around the world, can potentially kind of take from it and apply it to their own Masonic experiences. I am doing well. Happy to be back once again. Happy to be live streaming. I just found out Southwest Airlines, the cost of bag checking is $35 and $45 for a second piece of luggage. As someone who travels a lot, I always try to pay attention to the cost of it. Southwest was always great because you didn't need to pay for checked bags. But everything is getting more expensive nowadays, including flying. Welcome. If you're just joining us, please jump in the chat and say hello. We're here chatting about Freemasonry. Do these streams every Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern. We also talk about other important, topics and subjects as well, not just Freemasonry. So if there's anything else that you want to talk about, please let me know in the chat. The second hour is when we talk about specific topics. In today's case, it's going to be the speech from the throne. But the first hour is where we just kind of chat, hang out, wait for the audience to find me. Let me know how it's going. And as always, what do you want to talk about? Any thoughts you have on Freemasonry, positive, negative, or neutral? I'd love to hear it. Well, I mean, Burger King is all around the world. Burger King is pretty common around the world. It's good. I mean, I like Burger King. My favorite fast food is probably McDonald's because I'm basic like that. I'll stick to the classics, What is the all-seeing eye? I mean, the all-seeing eye is not exclusive to Freemasonry. It's something you see in many different groups, organizations, sometimes religious, sometimes not. I mean, sometimes it is a metaphor for a supreme being or for a god. I mean, it references really the idea that wherever you are, whatever you do, you are being kind of watched or judged by it could be your conscience in some ways, it could be, morality. And so always trying to act in a manner that, to the best of your ability is good or is to the good. Act in a manner that is just and fair. Or just keep in mind that there's maybe something up above always watching you, The all-seeing eye, I mean, again, though, that's not that is a Masonic idea, but it's not unique to Freemasonry. Certainly it existed in ancient Egypt in some ways. It existed in many different, again, not groups and organizations. Instagram cut. I think you're new to the stream, Instagram. Thank you for being here. I hope you hit the like and subscribe button. Not really. So are Freemasons connected with the Illuminatis? Illuminati was started by an Adam Weishaupt in 1888, if I recall correctly. He started it, he was a Freemason, but he did not like Freemasonry. He started it because he found Freemasonry to be both too expensive and also not esoteric enough for his liking. So he decided he was going to start his own group called the Illuminati. So it almost started as an anti-Masonic group. I believe the Illuminati no longer exist, or at least their numbers are so small as to not be relevant when you're talking about like civil culture, civil society, or civic society. Conspiracy theorists like to, bring the Illuminati in and claim that the Illuminati and Masonry are the same, or that the Illuminati took over Freemasonry, etc., which is all not the case. And there are also some scammers who will create fake groups, especially on Facebook, and combine the two titles. So they'll say like the Grand Order of Illuminati Freemasonry wants you to, the Grand Order of the Freemasons of the Illuminati wants you to join. You just have to send us $500 and, you can be part of our group. And so a lot of people will get those messages. They'll start to think to themselves, oh, Freemasonry and Illuminati are the same, when in fact they've been responding to a scammer, which is very annoying. But I hope that answers your question, Instagram cut. I hope you'll be so kind as to hit that like and subscribe button. Aiden, keep it up, man. Thank you, Aiden. I truly appreciate that. I appreciate you being here. I do these streams every Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today's stream is going to be the second hour. We're going to talk about the speech from the throne, why I think that what I think Freemasons can take away from the speech from the throne, how I think it may, some things I saw in there that I think are important for Freemasons to keep in mind. And I always say that, I mean it not from a political standpoint, but rather from a not a political standpoint, excuse me, but from a administrative standpoint. Like, these are things we need to pay attention to, because what is happening in the country, whether it be economically, socially, politically, or all of the above, it's going to affect what happens in a lodge, right? Who founded the Freemasons, asks Instagram Cut. Well, so the Freemasons, there's a lot of answers I could give to that, right? Freemasonry evolved from the stonemason guilds of Europe. So, I mean, you could argue the very first stonemason founded Freemasonry, because it went stonemasons and then Freemasons. I would use the date at the start of Freemasonry as 1623. With the Regius manuscript. And so, well, actually, sorry, no, 1599. Lord Alexander, a member of Edinburgh Lodge in 1599. He was the first speculative Freemason, for example. But in 1623, there was at Rose Hall Chapel. I'm trying to find the names of them now. If I could track this thing down. Oh, sorry, 1634. 1634. Here it is. I'm kind of cheating a little bit. Sorry, the first recorded mission of non-Masons was on 3 July 1634 at the Lodge of Edinburgh Mary's Chapel, number 1, Sir Anthony Alexander, his elder brother, Lord Alexander, and Sir Alexander. So you could argue those were the founders of the Freemasons, in the sense that they were the first speculative Freemasons, if that makes any sense. But, again, it's like you could push it back to who started the first stone mason guild. You could say, who was the first Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of England, right? The minutes weren't taken until 1723. And, the Grand Lodge started in 1717, but you could argue Anthony Sayer. You could argue George Payne was the Grand Master. So there's different founders. It's tough to say. But there is also, this is driving me crazy now, Rose Hall Chapel. Let me try if I can find that. I'm going to have to find it somewhere. It's 1634. Who gets the money you put into it if you join? Well, I mean, so the Rosslyn chapter, sorry, not Rose Hall, Rosslyn, Rosslyn. Who gets the money? Well, so the lodge gets the money, the treasurer gets the money that goes to lodge expenses. So, for example, I pay approximately, let's just say $100 per year for my dues. Of that $100, it's put into a bank account that's run by the lodge, and the treasurer is the one who can, write checks. Of that, the expenses that come out of that would be for the building itself, where we meet, heating the building, cooling the building, repairs, upgrades, taxes, whatever there might be in terms of the building itself. The costs associated with refreshments after a lodge meeting, or before a lodge meeting, any special events the lodge wishes to hold and needs to pay for may come out of that fund. There may be a social fund. There may be benevolence where you pay for charitable events. And so, yeah, so there are different costs. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the goal, right? I mean, fingers crossed it is self-sustaining. It kind of has to be, right? Because, there are some times where, let's say, a member will die and in his will, he'll leave an investment to the lodge. There may be some members of the public that will sometimes make donations to, especially Masonic building, if they have memories there and want to, help keep it afloat. But really, the goal is that the lodge is self-sustaining and pays its own way. Or again, sometimes they'll have investments. Oftentimes for a building, and this was true especially in the 1920s, when these Masonic buildings were being built, they were built with spaces for rental from the public so that they could fund themselves through rental of the space, whether it be, concerts, plays, musical productions, theater productions, or weddings or special events like that. They have spaces where they try to bring in revenue that way as well. But yes, at its core, it is a self-sustaining society. And whether it's big or not, I guess, will depend on the definition of big. I mean, it's right now about 850,000 members in the States. At one time, there was 4 million members in the States, and at one time, there was even more. So I hope that answered your question. I kept calling it Rose Hill. It's Rose Lynn, or Rose Hall, I should say. I kept calling it Rose Hall, but it's Rose Lynn Chapter. Right? I mean, and again, when you talk about where it was founded, you could go back to the Regius manuscript, dates to 1390. I decided to join because my lodge was primarily Scottish Rite. For whatever reason, most of the members of my mother lodge had joined Scottish Rite, and I decided to follow in those footsteps. And also, a friend of mine her brother was going into the East. And he, in Scottish Rite, going to the East, and he wanted me to join to be able to assist him, and so I decided to join for that reason as well. So so York Rite is something I know very little about. I hope that answers your question. Um, I hope also that I was able to answer your question, Instagram cut, as to where the money goes. And I do, once again, hope you'll be so kind as to everybody watching this to hit the like button and subscribe button. Let me know how you're doing and if there's anything that you want to chat about when it comes to Freemasonry. Any thoughts you have, positive, negative, or neutral, I would love to try to answer them. I've been a Mason since 2007. I certainly don't know everything about Freemasonry, but hopefully I'm able to at least provide you with at least some analysis from myself personally, especially as to what I think makes a successful Masonic Lodge experience. So 1634. I always kept thinking 1623, but 1634 is when the first records of the first Masons join, or non-operative Masons, I should say. That is true. I mean, and I always say, Courtney, there is plenty of sand in the sandbox, which means, there's plenty of room for Scottish Rite, York Rite, Blue Lodge. There's plenty of room for Order of Eastern Star. Um, there's plenty of room for Order of Women Freemasons, plenty of room for youth groups. Plenty of room for all of the above. Pahadi, I think you've been here before, but hello, welcome again. I hope that you are doing well. Thank you so much for doing it. Thank you so much for being here. Please take a moment to hit that like button, answer our poll question, and let me know what it is you want to talk about. I like to think I'm very handsome, so thank you for that. I don't know. I think approximately 28,000, 28,500, um, approximately. So, which again is lower. It's dropped a lot. Even since I joined, it's dropped significantly, which is unfortunate. I do hope that it starts to go up again, obviously, fingers crossed. But yeah, approximately 28,500, give or take. And like always, all we can do, hopefully, is do our best to promote the craft as much as we can and try to see it grow. But thank you, everybody who's here. I hope everybody is doing well. Please take a moment, if you are just joining, hit the like and subscribe button. You're typing it fine, though. I speak English and bad English, so, there's nothing I can say in terms of, I can't judge anybody else's languages. Having said that, I've argued forever that Freemasons need to communicate in more than just the English language. They need to communicate in many different languages to their membership and to the public at large. Because Freemasonry itself is multilingual. Freemasonry exists in, it's Freemason ritual takes place in Spanish, takes place in Portuguese, takes place in Japanese, takes place in French. So, there are many languages through which Freemasons communicate. But I hope everybody watching this is doing well. Please take a moment once again to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let me know how you're doing and if there's anything you want to chat about. The first hour is always just talking, hanging out. The second hour is when we switch over to specific topics and specific subjects. Today's subject, the speech from the throne, and why I think there's something that Freemasons, in Canada especially, can take from it. So we're going to give it another few minutes. By the way, I want to remind everybody right now we have our Patreon deal happening where if you join our Patreon account from now until June 1st, you get 10% off all the tiers, which provides an opportunity to take advantage of that special offer now till June 1st. The code is 23D69. The website is patreon.com/square and compass. But as always, I hope everybody watching this is doing well. Please take a moment, jump in the chat, say hello. I hope that you are enjoying your day back at work from the long weekend if you were in the States. And yeah, let's give it a bit of time. Let's see who joins. On all opinions, it does. It absolutely does. There's a lot of amazing parts of Freemasonry in Toronto. I've had the chance, luckily enough, to visit a few Masonic buildings in and around Toronto, and it's always been really special and really fun. So yeah, Toronto's one of those places where I never really seem to like stop there. I'm always passing through there. You know, it's like a way station for me. I'm always going there to go to the airport. I'm always going there to, you know, whatever it might be, to go to the airport, to pass through, to go to Ottawa, to go there for a Masonic meeting and come back the same day, to go for a Grand Lodge. It's one of those things where I almost never like, you know, stay there for an extended period of time. But it's still a great, great city and great Masonic history. Would be fun to kind of do a podcast episode about that in particular. But thank you everybody who's joined so far. As always, please take a moment, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let me know what it is that you want to talk about. And I'm going to pull up the speech from the throne. Well, that's going to be a question that's individual and personal to each Freemason, right? I would say for me, it wasn't so much about better understanding myself, it was more about better understanding the people around me, and better understanding, like it was about, again, creating creating a bond through shared experience, right? That is true, Dad. And in fact, the first 12 premiers of Manitoba were all Freemasons. All right. So we're going to give it, as I said, another 15 minutes. And then in the second hour, I'm going to switch over, talk about my specific topic, and, you know, Freemasonry, or what Freemasons can maybe take away from the speech from the throne. And we'll kind of go from there. Actually, I wrote something on Medium, which I'll share as well in a moment, related to not the throne speech, but rather 3 questions they had for Prime Minister Mark Carney, which is also kind of demonstrate how I approach this, or how I approach the speech, or what I was looking for, and what I was hoping to see. Welcome. If you're just joining us, I hope you will jump in the chat, say hello. My name is Cameron Adamson. Every Monday through Friday, 1 p.m., I do these live streams where I talk about Freemasonry. Any thoughts or comments you have, please jump in the chat and let me know. I will also, at the 1 hour mark, I switch over and start on my specific topic. Today, it's going to be the speech from the throne. Not so much my reaction to it personally, but rather what I think we as Freemasons, especially Freemasons in Canada, can take away from that. And what we can maybe learn from it and apply to our own Masonic experiences. I've said it a million times, what's happening in the world, whether it be economically, whether it be socially, whether it be, in terms of crime, in terms of whatever it is, whatever is happening in the world, in our communities, is going to affect our Masonic lodges. It's going to affect the membership numbers. It's going to affect the ability for people to join and to pay for dues. It's going to affect the amount of time people have to dedicate to Freemasonry. And so we as Freemasons need to care about and need to pay attention to those things, which is incredibly important. Right? Even I've talked about this before, the tensions that exist between Canada and the US, which is affecting travel to the US from Canada. That also means Freemasons are less likely to travel to the US, less likely to travel to the US for Masonic events, which is unfortunate. Even though I have my own issues, I still believe that it is worth traveling to the United States for Masonic events. I think there's a lot of value to it. So yeah, but it's one of those situations where you have to kind of decide. For Masons themselves are affected by the world at large. What happens in the world is going to affect your Masonic experience, whether that be economics, politics, crime, whatever it might be. It all matters. Homelessness policy. I mean, if you have a Masonic building in a downtown area, homelessness is something you're dealing with and trying to figure out how to resolve these problems, because you're going to have homeless people camping out in your area, right? As costs go up, it costs more to run buildings. Dues have to go up. All that stuff matters. Ryan is here. Hello, Ryan. I hope that you are doing well. I hope you will hit that like and subscribe button. Everybody watching this, I hope you will be so kind as to hit the like and subscribe button. And don't forget to always tune back into my, social media accounts. Again, I've got some stuff coming up this week, that I'm very excited about, and I will share with you guys once they're up, including something tomorrow. So I'm excited for that as well. Talking about Davignon, the first master of Windsor Lodge, number 403. 11 votes. Did you watch Canada's speech from the throne? No at 78%. Yes at 10 votes or 11 votes. No at 73%. Yes at 27%. So the no's are in the lead. But for now, I do hope, if you are just joining, especially if you're new to the stream, please jump in the chat and say hello. Let me know how you're doing and if there's anything that you want to talk about. Any thoughts, any comments you have about Freemasonry, positive, negative, or neutral? I'd love to hear them. Welcome. If you are just joining, I'm going to give it another, like I said, 10 minutes, and we're going to start on the main topic, which once again is going to be Freemasonry, or more particularly the speech from the throne. Why I think it's important that we as Freemasons pay attention to it. But that's 10 minutes in. For now, just jump in the chat, say hello. Let me know how you're doing, and if there's anything that you want to talk about, any question about Freemasonry, any comments, positive, negative, or neutral, I'd love to hear them. Even if you're anti-Freemasonry, you know what? That's okay. It gives me a chance to kind of sharpen my skills with the debate. I'm not sure I've ever heard that expression before, the gentleman masons. I'm not sure to what that refers. Other than we're all gentlemen, I suppose. The gentleman masons. Although actually I'd say we're not gentlemen at all. Or a character named Keith the Mason, a Gentleman. There was an article written 145 years ago called The Mason, a Gentleman. Might be worth checking out. I'm anti-masonry. Good for you. I am the same way. Although, like I said, I'll never knock anybody for their opinions. Just as long as you're respectful when you express them to me, I'll try my best to be respectful back, I guess. And again, by having people on who are anti-masonry, it at the very least helps a little bit in the sense that it helps me sharpen my skills when I'm promoting Freemasonry by having people on who are more negative towards it. Welcome. I hope everybody is doing well, though. Please take a moment. If you're just joining us, hit that like and subscribe button. Let me know how you're doing. If there's anything you want to talk about before we get into our main topic of the day, which is, once again, the throne speech. Well, they wouldn't be considered a Freemason, right? An equivalent example would be if every day exercise and lead a healthy lifestyle, you're following the tenets of, a gym, but you would not be considered, like you couldn't go to Good Life Fitness and say, I live a fitness-based lifestyle, I exercise every day, so I'm a member of the gym, right? Being a member, to be a Freemason, is a membership-based designation to a certain degree. You have to be a member. Having said that, though, there are many people who do live their lives in accordance with the tenets of Freemasons, and certainly I think, they can be considered to be living like a Freemason, but they wouldn't be a Freemason per se. Because in some ways, fortunately, in some ways, unfortunately, Freemasonry is a membership-based designation as well as a skills-based designation. But it's not exclusively based on how you live, if that makes any sense. Got lots of compliments in Lodge on my new Masonic pin. Did I send you what is the new Masonic pin? I'm trying to remember if that came up from before. But I hope everybody is doing well. Thank you, everybody, for joining. As I was saying, I'll take a couple more moments before we start on the main topic today, which is the speech from the throne. An interesting 11 votes. Yes, 27%. No, 33%. Oh, well, I mean, it's awesome. Having, Masonic pins are one of those things that everybody collects. A lot of people, what they're doing now is they're actually purchasing a white apron, an EA apron here in Canada, and attaching and like using that. They hang the apron up on the wall, and then they use it to display all of their Masonic pins. I know some brothers who probably need 2 or 3 aprons for all the Masonic pins that they have. So I have a piece of fabric that has a square and compasses on it that I use to put all my pins on. and I have a ton of pins, of coins. It still is my goal at some point to do a stream where I share with people everything in my Masonic collection. It's just, it would take forever because I have so many items that, trying to figure out how to do it, I'm still not quite sure yet. But, and I mean, even trying to remember all the different stories from all those different things, like, it's so tough because there's so many stories and so many pins and so many lodges and so many trips. I would, for every story I gave, I'd probably forget something and feel bad. So I'm not sure the best way to deal with that, but I'm working on it. I'm trying to figure it out. It would be cool though. I mean, it's just stacked to the brim, and some of them are more personal to me and have some really personal stories, especially like the past masters jewels, which came from my family. Some of them are not so personal. It's just one of those things where it's tough because you're trying to figure out how best to deal with it, or how best to kind of display the things in a way that's interesting, in a way that people find cool, and also in a way that does justice to the items. But maybe, who knows? Maybe I'll do that on like when I'm on a midnight stream at some point, when I'm still doing the midnight streams, just to try something different again and see what people think. And please, as a moment, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're joining and if you're new. Um, I hope Canada's committed to those things. That's what it said in the speech from the throne. Let me know, hit the like, hit the subscribe, jump in the chat, and yeah, we will start talking about this subject more. Starting with the main subject, the speech from the throne in 2 minutes. I always spend the first hour just waiting to see who can find me and what they want to talk about. And then the second hour is where we switch it up and start on the specific topics. Also, yesterday, in honor of Memorial Day, I put on my YouTube page, community page, 3 quizzes about Masonic military heroes. If you get the chance to check that out and answer those questions, let me know how many, well, give your answer and then put in the comment whether you got it correct or incorrect. Grand Lodge of Canada in the province of Ontario. Grand Lodge of Canada in the province of Ontario. Which is a whole funny story behind that, actually, as to why it's called the Grand Lodge of Canada, the province of Ontario. Why is it not just called the Grand Lodge of Ontario? It certainly did not endear my Grand Lodge to other provinces, because every other province, it's, Grand Lodge of Manitoba, Grand Lodge of Saskatchewan, and then in Ontario, we're called the Grand Lodge of Canada in the province of Ontario, which does make some people think there is one national Grand Lodge. So, that was one of those things where we probably should have, looking back, not just called it Grand Lodge of Ontario. But the technical term is Grand Lodge of Canada in the province of Ontario. And that comes back to the days when it was Upper Canada and Lower Canada. So you can kind of understand where it came from, even though it was kind of a funny story. All right. I think we can get started now on the main topic. So, well, I mean, I would say it's taboo in Canada as well, right? I mean, it's the taboo is not so much whether it's a national or provincial. There's nothing in theory that would stop it. It's more, jurisdictional sovereignty is the key element, and making sure there's jurisdictional sovereignty. So you couldn't start a Grand Lodge of America because that would be infringing on the sovereignty of every state Grand Lodge. Whereas in other places where you don't have that same federalist system, it makes much more sense to have a national Grand Lodge, like Grand Lodge of England. But even there's Grand Lodge of England and Grand Lodge of Scotland. So, territorial sovereignty, territorial jurisdiction is a really important aspect and understanding of what Freemasonry is and how it operates. And I've often said the conspiracy theorists, one of the biggest kind of mistakes that they make is believing that there is like not even a national, but like a global Masonic order that controls what Masons do around the world, as opposed to jurisdictions. The Americans tried it, did they? I mean, I'm assuming even when they tried it, they would try it not, at that time maybe there was no Prince Hall yet, but it doesn't. It doesn't see, to my knowledge, there's never really been any serious efforts to create a national Grand Lodge, and I don't think there ever will be. I mean, the states has always been very proud of its federal system where power is divided between the states and the federal government, and it seems to me the natural offshoot of that would be state by state Grand Lodges. Though I can understand early in America's history, all the lodges would have been, really being chartered out of UGLE maybe. So maybe it was worth giving it a shot. So on to today's topic. On April 28th, 2025, Canadians elected a Liberal minority government under the leadership of Prime Minister Mark Carney. Approximately 1 month later, King Charles arrived in Canada and presented the speech from the throne, which is a speech or a document outlining the goals and objectives of a newly elected government. In this case, once again, the newly elected government of Liberal leader Mark Carney. The success of a Masonic lodge or body cannot be separated from the success of a community in which it's located. In the same way, the condition of Freemasonry is affected by decisions made at all levels of government, including federal. I mean, if you came to visit a Freeth, you'd be welcome to tour the building. I'd love to show it to you. It's a beautiful building. More broadly, the condition of a civic culture, of which Freemasonry is a part, is affected by the decisions made at all levels of government, including the federal government. The value of a strong civic culture is explored through many works, most notably Robert D. Putnam's 2000 work, Bowling Alone, The Collapse and Revival of American Community, and his 2023 follow-up documentary, Join or Die. Square Promotions have discussed in past content, both on Medium and via social media channels, the economic, social, health, and democratic benefits of a strong and vibrant culture, civic culture, and the ways in which Freemasonry is a part of that culture and contributes to those benefits. With the above in mind, I was looking and curious if we might see three things in the throne speech. Will there be any steps by the government, and what will those steps be to encourage civic engagement amongst Canadians? Will the government consider plans or initiatives to encourage travel within Canada for all Canadians, such as a federal staycation tax credit? Will the government take any steps to encourage the preservation of heritage buildings and heritage architecture across Canada? So, those are more granular issues, if you want to use that term. For many Freemasons, for a speech from the throne to talk about the government's agenda and plans for the coming months. Yes, he may not touch on those topics specifically, but I do think it's possible that we can gather certain clues, right, from the speech from the throne, which was again released or presented today. I do want to mention, though, a couple of other points. Before I get into the specifics, one thing to keep in mind and remember is the speech from the throne was read by the king in both English and French. We have two official languages in Canada, English and French, and I've often argued and suggested that Freemasons need to do more to present its information and communicate in a diversity of languages, particularly English and French. One thing I was really proud of when I was Worshipful Master is I had the lodge summons. I had the message provided in both official languages from the Master. So the Master provided his official language in English and he provided his official language in French. His official message in English and his official message in French in our summons. And part of that was because we in Harmony Lodge had a significant number of French members, members whose um, members whose first language was in fact French. And so I thought taking the time to present a message in French in our summons was a way to show respect for their national language or their first language, their mother language or mother tongue. I also thought it was a way to show respect for Canada and the fact that we in Canada have two official languages. And also, that way, because part of, we were applying for several grants for the building. One of the things they ask about is there communication in English and French? And that's a way to demonstrate that, yes, we are communicating in English and French. Another thing that you saw in the speech from the throne was a land acknowledgement at the start of it. I know land acknowledgements can be a touchy subject. I personally think that they have a value. We do have many Indigenous or First Nations brethren and First Nations Masons, but also just respecting the fact that, the land on which Freemasons meet was not always ours, did belong to other people in the past. And taking the time to demonstrate respect for that, I think, can only be a good thing. It's no different than if, heaven forbid, a Masonic building gets sold or lodges are removed from it for whatever reason. Maybe they can't afford them anymore. Whoever takes over that building, I would hope that they would still recognize and respect some of the Masonic traditions within that building, and maybe every now and then do something to mention who the building once belonged to. Or maybe even, maintain the facade with square and compass symbols on it, or have a little section plaque where they talk about the history of the building and, mention the history of it as Masonic. So I personally am a fan of kind of these recognitions, and I think in a Masonic context, there's room for them in, for example, maybe including them in not every meeting, but in some meetings or special events. You can include them, for example, at the Grand Lodge of Manitoba's 150th anniversary celebration. They started with a land acknowledgement. I've been to banquets here in Ontario, Masonic banquets, where they start with a land acknowledgement. And even sometimes they can be included on, for example, maybe you don't say them at every meeting, but you include a land acknowledgement on some of your summonses or correspondence, maybe during special, Indigenous History Month, for example. So I think the presentation of the throne speech in both English and French, as well as the use of a land acknowledgement, are both things that Freemasons should think about and maybe consider, is it possible to incorporate those same things in our meetings. At one point in the throne speech, going to the specific text, the king stated, "Democracy, pluralism, the rule of law, self-determination, and freedoms are values which Canadians hold dear and ones which the government is determined to protect." Well, one of the ways I believe those values can be protected is through a promotion of civic culture, not just Freemasonry, but including Freemasonry. In Robert Putnam's book, Bowling Alone, one thing he says is countries that have higher rates of civic engagement, whether that be joining of clubs, joining of, going for picnics with groups of people, joining clubs, joining bowling leagues, joining Oddfellows, joining Freemasonry, the greater extent you have of civic engagement, the stronger democracy is, the stronger pluralism is, the stronger the rule of law is. All of those things go hand in hand, right? And Robert Putnam found this by examining actually the Italian situation in like the 60s and 70s, where he found that those communities in Italy that had the highest rates of civic engagement and civic participation had the strongest democracies, had the best forms of pluralism. So if, the prime minister and the government is serious about protecting the value of democracy, the value of pluralism, the value of rule of law, then part of that means investing in or encouraging civic engagement and civic society, including but not limited to Freemasonry and Masonic organizations. They then go on to say the system of open global trade that, while not perfect, has helped deliver prosperity for Canadians for decades, is changing. Canada's relationship with partners relationships with partners are also changing, right? There's a reference there to the States. Canada's relationship with partners are also changing. I also think Canadian Masons and their relationship with their American brethren is changing. I know many Canadian Masons less inclined to travel to the States right now, which in my opinion represents a lost opportunity. But I hope that if Canadian Freemasons are less willing to travel to the States for Masonic events, they are more willing, therefore, to travel within Canada. To travel within Canada to different Masonic events, to different Masonic locations, and kind of make up for it that way. But there's no doubt that as the Canada-US relationship changes, so too does the Canadian-United States Masonic relationship change. Hopefully, though, it's not forever. We must be clear-eyed. The world is a more dangerous and uncertain place than at any point since the Second World War. I would view that, to be perfectly honest, as quite a bit of hyperbole. I mean, I would say the world was more dangerous during the Cuban Missile Crisis than it is today. The Vietnam War at times presented a more dangerous world than we have today. Even the Cold War, not just the Cuban Missile Crisis, but various points in the Cold War and the threat of nuclear war, I think the world was certainly as dangerous, if not a more dangerous and uncertain place. So I feel like that's hyperbole. Having said that, I don't want to underplay the uncertainty, and again, the benefit Freemasonry can have in an uncertain time to give people a kind of home to come into with brothers and with their families at a challenging time. Many Canadians are feeling anxious and worried about drastically changing world around them. Again, Freemasonry can provide a sense of stability, a sense of stability in a world that is drastically changing. And also a safety net for those who may be left behind, who may need financial assistance due to loss of job, increased cost of living, medical expenses, whatever it might be. Fundamental change is always unsettling, yet this moment is also an incredible opportunity. An opportunity for renewal, an opportunity to think big and to act bigger, an opportunity for Canada to embark on the largest transformation of its economy since the Second World War. A confident Canada, which has welcomed new Canadians, including from some of the most tragic global conflict zones, can seize this opportunity by recognizing that all Canadians can give themselves far more than any foreign power on any continent can ever take away. And that by staying true to Canadian values, Canada can build new alliances and a new economy that serves all Canadians. So we talk about here the relationship with the United States and new relationships. The G7 conference in June in Canada is going to be crazy. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen there. He talks about affordability here, right? Reducing GST to save two-income families up to $840 a year, cutting GST on homes at or under $1 million for first-time home buyers, delivering savings up to $50,000, lowering the GST on homes between 1 million and 1.5 million. So again, as a Freemason, we have to care about sorry about that banging, I'm not sure what's happening. We have to care about the economy in which we live and in which our lodges operate. $840 a year saving, that's, a couple years worth of lodge dues in most cases. So these things, if you are struggling financially and you're given an opportunity to save some money somewhere else, maybe you decide to stay with your Masonic lodges as opposed to, potentially demitting to save money. The dental plan, etc., etc. He talks about internal trade, which I think is a very important thing. When Canadians come together, Canada builds things that last. Again, he says when Canadians come together, that idea of coming together, I think, is vitally important when it comes to not just our economy, but our social fabric and our civic culture. He talks about building a safer and more secure Canada. I would say, again, if you have a Masonic building or Masonic lodge in a downtown area, or really almost anywhere now, you are dealing with issues of crime, you're dealing with issues of homelessness, you are needing to invest in security systems, you're needing to invest in lights, you're needing to invest in security guards in some cases. The safety of our membership is becoming more and more demanding of needing to take extra steps that you probably didn't need to take even 20 years ago. Again, such as security cameras, such as security guards, such as better locking systems and new locking systems, right? All that stuff matters. During this time of great change, Canadians are uniting behind what makes Canada unique. The French language and the Quebec culture are at the heart of the Canadian identity. Once again, I was very proud that our lodge summons, when I was secretary, had both the English and the French language represented. I thought that was really, really an important thing to do. Not only but also for our French members or those members who spoke French as their native and first language. The government will always protect the rights and freedoms that the Charter guarantees for every Canadian. I think Freemasonry helps that. The government will be a reliable partner to Indigenous peoples, upholding its fundamental commitment to advancing reconciliation. Central to its commitment is the creation of a long-term wealth and prosperity with Indigenous peoples. For that reason, the Canadian government will double the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program. I just want to say on Indigenous peoples, once again, Freemasonry, I think, has a lot of opportunities to support Indigenous individuals, including Indigenous Freemasons, considering things like land acknowledgements, doing presentations in lodge on Indigenous history, maybe the history of Indigenous peoples and Freemasonry, using Indigenous shops when you're doing, and Indigenous food when you're doing refreshments. Maybe when you're purchasing your snacks for after lodge or refreshments after lodge, you look to see if there's Indigenous owned restaurants that can create some food. And that can also be a learning experience, right? You can serve traditional Indigenous food and then have an explanation as to what the food is, how it's made, the history of it. It gives the chance for the person catering to kind of promote their business a little bit as well as their culture. These things are worth thinking about. I would say, I even talked about this on a Medium article. Let me see if I can track this down and find it. By the way, if you are just joining us, please take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button. When it came to the murdered and missing Indigenous women, see if I can find it now. Here it is. The National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, right? They had a series of calls for justice that Freemasons can engage with or support. As they say in the throne speech, Indigenous peoples are an important part of our culture. You know, you can invite First Nations groups or individuals to speak at a Masonic meeting or event. It can even be during refreshment if they're not themselves Masons. You can look at land acknowledgements. You can invite First Nations groups to engage in private or public ceremonies, depending on what is more important. So, for example, you could have a smudging ceremony as part of your Masonic event. You could use your daily advancement in Masonic knowledge to learn more about the history of First Nations and Freemasonry. You know, you could look at Native American Freemasonry. You could look at learning about Chief Tecumseh. You could look at learning about the Oklahoma Indian Degree Team. You could read the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Final Report, Calls for Justice, and also the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations. And you could recognize National Indigenous Peoples Day through a social media post, an event, or a mention in Lodge. And I will say, you know, this also applies for Scottish Rite, York Rite. I was recently at a Scottish Rite celebration banquet where they included several traditional First Nations acknowledgments, such as they had a First Nations traditional dance. They were auctioning off products that were from First Nations owned businesses. So, you know, all that stuff I think we can do. And that's not to say you can stop there. I mean, he talks in the throne speech, they mention, right, our history of welcoming new Canadians and immigration. So maybe, certainly to honor Indigenous peoples, maybe one thing you do is after Lodge, your refreshments are Indigenous or First Nations, and you talk about what the refreshments are and the history of them. But you can even take it a step further and do that for new Canadians. So maybe what you do is you have a potluck dinner at your lodge where everybody brings in one dish that represents their culture. So if you're Indian, like if you are, you know, First Nations, you bring in First Nations dish. If you are from India, you bring in Indian food like curry, naan. If you are from England, you bring in some fish and chips. If you are South American, you bring in, you know, South American food. You kind of bring food that represents your culture, and you can even talk about it, you know, give people a chance to learn and support, you know, the variety of cultures within the lodge. So I think that, you know, is something to keep in mind, and again, touched on by the throne speech. Again, it says here, Canada's immigration system has long been a source of pride for Canadians and dynamism for the economy. The government is dedicated to rebuilding the trust of Canadians in the immigration by restoring balance. But again, the immigrants who are here, who are part of our lodges, maybe, again, do a potluck. Do a thing where they can do a presentation in lodge about their story, their culture, their journey from the Philippines, from the Middle East, from South America, from wherever it might be to Canada. What was that journey like? What are some things they can share? Were they a Freemason in their home country? And if they were, what are the differences and similarities between Freemason there and here, right? Building Canada strong. Spend less but invest more. I mean, Freemasonry is an investment of time. And then, as he says, as the anthem reminds, the true North is indeed strong and free. I think Freemasonry is one of the categories or one of the groups and organizations which assist it in becoming strong and free. So again, just to go over my kind of basic thoughts one more time. First, I think we as Freemasons should take note that the speech from the throne was presented in both English and French. And as such, I think we as Freemasons should remember we have two official languages, and when possible, and if possible, try to communicate in both of those official languages. I also noted the speech from the throne included a land acknowledgement, and I think we as Freemasons should, in Canada, consider ways that we can, partner with and support and also ask for support from Indigenous and First Nations peoples that can include, but is not limited to, land acknowledgements. In the speech from the throne itself, it starts with a mention of democracy, pluralism, the rule of law, self-determination, and freedom are values which Canadians hold dear, and ones which the government is determined to protect. If the government is truly determined to protect those values, investing in a civic culture, investing in the maintenance of civic groups, whether they be sporting teams, youth groups, religious or church groups, book clubs, libraries, bowling leagues, and Freemasonry and Masonic groups. All the studies show that as civic culture grows, as those things grow, so too grows and strengthens democracy, so too grows and strengthens pluralism, so too do you grow and strengthen the rule of law, and so too do you grow and strengthen, a stronger freedom, stronger sense of freedom, stronger just freedoms. So if they do mean that, and if the government is determined to protect democracy, pluralism, rule of law, self-determination, and freedom, part of what it needs to do is also protect civic society and civic culture and civic engagement. While I don't believe that the world is a more dangerous and uncertain place than at any point since World War II, because again, what about the Cuban Missile Crisis? I do 100% agree that the world is a dangerous place. It is a challenging time. Many Canadians are feeling anxious and worried. When you have changing times, when you have what feels like unprecedented times, a thing like Freemasonry, something that provides stability is even more important than ever before, right? You kind of need that sense of stability. The goal of building a new relationship with the United States, that may also need to apply to the idea of Canadian versus American Freemasons. What does our relationship look like when you have more and more Canadians, including Canadian Freemasons, more and more hesitant to travel to the States? Does that affect the Canadian-U.S. relationship? The Canadian-U.S. Freemason relationship? And do we as Freemasons need to take steps to maintain and mend that relationship even during what can be challenging political times? Right? As if the government is successful in its goal of, for example, saving two-income families up to $840 a year, saving on GST for new homes, will that encourage, people to remain within Freemasonry or even join? Like with their plan about reducing taxes, they're saying they want to save two-income families up to $840 a year. That's 2 to 3 years worth of dues for many people. Does it not give them a chance to maintain their Masonic memberships, even in cases where money is tight and a challenge? Right. Once again, the talk of security, the talk of law enforcement. If your Masonic lodge, Masonic building is in any type of downtown area, excuse me. Let me just deal with this. Is in any type of downtown area, then part of what you're dealing with is going to be crime, homelessness, and the investing and the needing to invest in new security systems, better security systems, even maybe security personnel is becoming more and more of a reality for more and more Masonic buildings, including my own. The mentioning of the French language and Quebec culture. Again, I was very proud as a master. I encouraged the use of both official languages in our correspondence, which I thought was incredibly important, both to respect the members whose first language was French, as well as the fact that we are Canadian. We have two official languages. Being a reliable partner to Indigenous peoples, the speech from the throne mentioned that. I think we as Freemasons should also be reliable partners to Indigenous peoples. There are a lot of different ways to do that. You can consider doing things like land acknowledgements. You can also consider, for example, um, inviting First Nations groups or individuals to speak at Masonic meetings or events. You can go to refreshment if they're Masons themselves. It can be during a tiled meeting, including land acknowledgements at various times. I don't think every time, but sometimes. Inviting First Nations groups to engage in private or public ceremonies. Using a daily advancement in Masonic knowledge to learn more about the history of First Nations and Freemasonry. Reading the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls final report, and also the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations. Recognize National Indigenous Peoples Day, June 21st. You can make a social media post. You can mention it in lodge or combination of all of the above. And then also, while you're doing that, as this throne speech mentions, the immigration system has long been a source of pride for Canadians and dynamism for the economy. So consider that as well. How many immigrants do you have in your lodge? And might it be fun to talk to them about sharing their stories? For example, do a lodge potluck where you each brother brings in a dish that represents his culture. And it could even be, maybe he was born in Canada, but his parents emigrated from somewhere else. So maybe you have, food and dishes coming in from the Philippines, from Japan, from Eastern Europe, from Hungary, from England, from South America, from Mexico. Maybe you've got some American immigrants and they, bring in, maybe they grew up in Texas, so they immigrated from Texas, so maybe they bring in Texas barbecue. Right, like there's ways to celebrate the immigrant nature of Canada. Maybe have them do a presentation in lodge if they're comfortable. Like if they immigrated, let's say from the Philippines to Canada, maybe they were Masons in the Philippines, so they can talk about the differences between Freemasonry in the Philippines and Freemasonry in Canada. They can talk about their journey. They can talk about their experiences therein. And maybe every now and then you communicate in their language. So instead of doing English and French, maybe one summons you do English, French, and even, something in, let's say, the Filipino language. Because if you have a large Filipino group of Masons, it might be kind of fun to try that. Just try different things, But as they say, right, as they say in the throne speech, the government is a reliable partner to Indigenous peoples. How can we be reliable partners to Indigenous peoples as Freemasons? Canada's immigration system has long been a source of pride. How can we as Freemasons demonstrate our pride in the immigration system, and particularly the immigrants that make up our Masonic lodges and Masonic brotherhood and brethren? The speech from the throne says that their goal is to support law enforcement. How can we do that? Do we need to be taking our security more seriously, putting cameras on our buildings, sharing the feed from those cameras with law enforcement officers, et cetera, et cetera. And as they say, right, the true north is indeed strong and free. I would say that Freemasonry helps the true north be strong and free. And again, I think going back to the throne speech, what struck me the most is, where is it? Again, this first part: democracy, pluralism, the rule of law, self-determination, and freedom are values which Canadians hold dear. All the research I've studied has indicated thus far that that democracy, pluralism, rule of law, self-determination, and freedom are all strengthened when you have in your country a strong a strong civic culture. You have people joining clubs and groups. That is what strengthens the democracy, pluralism of a country. And if the government is determined genuinely to protect those things, then one way it can do that is by investing in civic culture. That can mean investing in it by, for example, investing in heritage buildings and community buildings, so civic groups have spaces in which to meet and operate. right? Civic groups often rely upon heritage buildings and heritage architecture to act as both meeting places and community centers. So that can be grants to support the renovation, restoration of these buildings. That can just be, again, using the bully pulpit to talk about the importance and highlight the importance of these buildings. That includes encouraging travel, getting Canadians to travel within Canada to see more of the country and their fellow Canadians will strengthen the civic culture as well. And maybe you need to do funding to assist civic groups hold events. Could be quote unquote recruiting drives, could be taking part in parades, anything like that. I like the pomp, having the lower chamber having to ask for permission to enter the Senate. I agree. I like the pomp as well. Pomp is important. That stuff matters. It really does. Freemasons understand that, you know. There's a reason why it's important that you follow kind of the ritual of opening and closing a lodge. It sets a tone. It's kind of almost a mindfulness practice, you could argue. And mindfulness practices are incredibly important and necessary. Star Chibuzer, Star, hey, welcome back. It's good to have you return once again. Thank you for being here. I hope that you are doing well. I hope to everybody watching this, if you're not done so yet, you will hit the like button and the subscribe button. I hope you found my kind of discussions on Freemasonry helpful. My views on the throne speech and how it connects to Freemasonry, you know, potentially of benefit. Maybe it can help you kind of consider the ways in which Freemasonry is affected by, you know, the government of the day, and the way Freemasonry can help society reach the goals of creating a better world. Once again, I hope all of this made sense. Let me know if it did or if it didn't. As always, like button, subscribe button. I hope everybody is doing well, and let's give it a few more minutes. Let's see who else joins and what it is that they want to talk about. And let me know if what I said made sense. Dad, let me know if what you thought made any sense at all. Maybe it didn't. But I think that is the end of this portion. Now we're just back to chatting, communicating, seeing who joins. Thank you, Star. I truly, truly appreciate it. I just posted on my Twitter question. Oh, looks like we got some construction happening. Hope it doesn't affect this stream too much. Asking people what they thought of the throne speech, positive, negative, or neutral. But welcome if you are just joining us. Thank you for being here. I hope everybody is doing well. Please take a moment to jump in the chat, say hello, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I wonder what Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party said about it. Maybe what response they gave. Oh, Mr. Speaker, I miss my conservative friends too, especially Pierre Poilievre. That is an attack. which, as somebody who's on the side of the Liberal Party now, you kind of got to get your elbows up. So I'm going to give this probably another 20 minutes or so. I'm just going to wait to see who else joins um, before, again, I switch off this stream. I will be back tomorrow with another stream at 1 p.m. I also have another video coming out tomorrow at 1 p.m. Or sorry, I have another video at 6 p.m., a YouTube short, talking about the first master of my mother lodge, Windsor Lodge 403, Davignon, who was actually a very important person in Windsor as well, not just Masonically, but just a very important person in Windsor. So he's a really cool dude, and I've been to his grave a couple times. I've done a couple of tributes at his grave. So he's a really special person. Wondering what he said. Hold on just 1 second.
C-69, the no development law. C-48, the shipping ban. No specific plans to get anything done, even though, as the Prime Minister has said, we are in a crisis to break our dependence on the American economy. They mentioned crime, but refused to say that they would repeal the liberal catch and release bail law, C-75, or the house arrest law. Laws that have allowed rampant chaos and crime to overtake our once tranquil streets. No mention of overcoming the opioid crisis and replacing tax-funded drugs and legalization with treatment and recovery. No mention of real plans to...
Welcome, if you're just joining us, hit that like and subscribe button. I hope you are doing well.
The cost of government. So we're here to turn the government's talking points into real plans. We pledge to work with the government to repeal the anti-energy law, C-69, repeal the energy cap, the electric vehicle mandate, the offshore shipping ban. Let's get our pipelines building. Let's get our goods to markets other than the United States. We're here to propose cuts to bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid, and corporate welfare so that we can bring down taxes, debt, and inflation. Let's repeal the catch and release laws so that we can restore safety to our streets. Let's invest in treatment and recovery to bring our loved ones home drug-free. In other words, let's replace the talking points with real plans to get it done. That is what Conservatives pledge to do. That is what Canadians voted for us to fight for, and that is what we will deliver. Thank you very much.
Fortunately, or unfortunately, or fortunately, depending how you define it, he is not in the House of Commons. It's tough. It's very tough. I do know about the system. I mean, it's been a little while, so I'm sure there's been changes, but there's no simple answer. There's no solution, It's one of those things where it's very easy on whatever side of it you're on to just say, well, just do X, just do Y, but it's never that simple. But again, I will say any Masonic building in Canada that's in a downtown area is having to deal with security issues, is having to deal with problems that they did not have to deal with in the past, having to, put in some cases, get actual physical security guards, but often upgrade security systems, include cameras with monitoring. Like, you need all that stuff. So, and a lot of times it was a matter of these especially if you have homeless people, they get picked up for something, whatever it might be. They get, put in jail for a couple days, couple weeks. They get released. They have nowhere to go. They start sleeping on the streets again. They start sleeping in front of our buildings or, in back alleys close to our buildings. You got to deal with that. Um, they try to break in for, warm place or something to eat or whatever it is. They get caught. They go to jail. There's in jail for a short period of time. They're back out. But I mean, again, if you're working in the jail system, there really isn't an obvious solution. I mean, you could say keep them in jail longer, but how much space do you actually have? Will that help anything? I'm not sure. Um, what's up, bro? What is up with yourself? I hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here. There's no way I can pronounce your name. It looks Mandarin, Cantonese, whatever it is. Thank you for being here. I hope you're doing well. I hope you will hit the like button and the subscribe button. I would truly, truly appreciate it. Please let me know how you're doing. And let me know if you have any questions about Freemasonry, any thoughts, any comments. I'd love to hear it. I can't promise I'll be able to answer every question, but I've been a Freemason since 2007, about 20 years. Well, then I appreciate you being here and I appreciate you saying hi. It is truly, truly appreciated. But, if you really want to make a lasting impression, like I said, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. That can only help. Maybe get some more people interested in the stream, which would be truly appreciated once again. What I missed? I'm not sure what you missed. I'm not sure when you got here. I was just talking about the speech from the throne that was presented here in Canada, the positive, negative, more so how I think it affects Freemasonry or what I think Freemasons should take away from it, whether it be the use of both official languages and why that's important in Canadian Masonic circles that we try the same, as well as the acknowledgement of First Nations people and that relationship, and how we as Freemasons can also try to strengthen that relationship. We talked about, safety and crime was brought up in the throne speech. And again, as Freemasons in Canada, if you have a Masonic building anywhere in a downtown area, or really almost anywhere, you are seeing increased issues around crime, around the necessity of better security systems, sometimes actual physical, like human security, sometimes, better locking systems, security cameras, gates, all that type of stuff. And, we talked about how if the government is successful in reducing the cost to Canadians, maybe they'll be more comfortable remaining in Freemasonry, not being afraid to, not feeling like they have to demit due to financial reasons. When you look at during the Great Depression, you saw massive drop off in Masonic membership because people just couldn't afford to be Masons. And many of our buildings were almost lost at the same time. And a few other things. Mostly at its core, the throne speech talked about the idea that, democracy is something that Canada is known for and something that the government wants to protect. And just all of the evidence shows that a strong civic culture, of which Freemasonry is a part, sometimes the part, only benefits and only strengthens democracy. So if the government is serious about strengthening democracy, the government should be serious also about strengthening our civic infrastructure and civic culture. And with that, now we're just back to the hangout phase of this whole thing. So anything people want to talk about, let me know, and we'll see what we can say. I do have Scottish Rite meeting tonight, which I have to go to, which is going to be a lot of fun. But Yeah, thank you all for joining. I may even do a like written response. Not maybe a written response per se, but just I'll go through the speech from the throne and I'll include in writing any comments or thoughts I have at various parts of it. Might be worth doing. I just need to get the actual text. Oh, here you can download the speech from the throne here. Oh, here it is. It's in both English and French. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name at all. That you broke up with your can't even read your name. That you broke up with your girlfriend. That always sucks. But I'm sure it'll get easier over time. At least I hope. I hope it will for you. But I am very sorry. Welcome if you're just joining us. And also, just on a personal note, watching the speech from the throne couldn't help but bring me back to my time in Ottawa, which is such an amazing place, a place that I absolutely love, a city I love, in a place I love, Parliament. I lived there for 2 years straight. I um, went back there for many summers, and it's a really cool spot and something I really loved. I love being there. So yeah, it was kind of fun watching something coming from there, and made me think about my old political life, so to speak, which was very much an important part of my life altogether. But thank you, everybody who has joined. Please, as always, if you're not done so yet, take a moment, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let me know how you're doing, and please take a moment to jump in the chat, say hello, and once again, like and subscribe. It's free to do. It helps out big time. And don't forget, we are still having our um, Patreon membership deal, 10% off if you become a new Patreon member. All right, we're gonna give it, let's say, another 7 minutes. I just want to see if anyone else jumps in the chat before I end this stream. I guess what I'd say is pay attention to my Medium channel, and I may write down my thoughts on the speech from the throne, what I think is relevant, what I think is not relevant to, or what I think is relevant to Freemasonry, um, and why I think it's relevant to Freemasonry. Again, I kind of went through the basics here on the stream. Official languages, strengthening the relationship between Indigenous peoples and Freemasonry, strengthening the relationship between immigrant communities and Freemasonry, and ways to do both of those things, strengthening of democracy by strengthening Freemasonry, strengthening of pluralism via the same mechanism, a recognition that Freemasons need to take crime and personal safety and safety of our lodge building seriously, especially if you have a building that is in a downtown or downtown area, and what that can look like, and a recognition of the fact that a person's economic situation will impact their ability to be a Freemason or to engage in Freemasonry. Occultist just joined. Hello, I hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here as always. Well, he kind of does have to mention. He has to follow the rules. He can't, if he starts editing it out, that creates a whole constitutional crisis. But I mean, I think you kind of got to mention America, right? Like, what choice do you have? When it's when it's the elephant in the room, sometimes not mentioning it can be worse than like, it's kind of like if there's again an elephant in the room, whatever it is, and you don't mention it, it can kind of become more obvious that you're trying to avoid mentioning it. Sometimes the best thing to do is just be honest. Um, and again, that's another thing, the Canadian versus American relationship that was brought up in the throne speech. There's also a changing Canadian-US Masonic relationship, at least a little bit. Um, and how do we deal with that? Um, I'm doing my best, occultist. Thank you so much. If you want to support the work, once again, um, go to patreon.com/square and compass and code 23D69. You get 10% off any tier you take. You can even take $3 per month US tier to support the channel in our efforts to promote the ways in which Freemasonry is relevant to the communities in which it's located. Well, I mean, Britain, I would want to stay on the good side of everybody. That's kind of the goal, right? You want to stay on the good side of everybody. But I mean, Americans understand, right, that at the end of the day, the king is reading a speech that was prepared by the prime minister. And, again, if he were to substitute or make his own edits, at that point, that would be quite the constitutional crisis. It'd be a very interesting constitutional crisis. By the way, speaking of monarchs, and a really cool little thing I learned, the King George VI, who was the king during World War II, he was the subject of the movie The King's Speech. He was actually a Freemason, as was his speech therapist, who was also portrayed in the movie The King's Speech. So that was kind of a cool little thing. So I guess I didn't see what's happening. Did you see the French president? I saw the clip. Um, yeah, kind of. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of talking about that stuff. I mean, whatever personal situation he's got. I understand, kind of, for better or worse, when you become a president, when you become a public figure in that way. When you become a president, when you become a public figure, then you really don't get the same expectations of privacy as you would otherwise. That just kind of is the way it is. But there's still something kind of skeevy about not just talking about it, but the way in which so many people online started to kind of build on it and use it to kind of really use it to get clicks and use it to get attention, right? Like, I don't, it's not something I'd rather talk about. Interesting enough, the French president did do a thing on and mentioned Freemasonry a few weeks ago, which I thought was really interesting. And I appreciated the fact that he did that. Well, it's definitely, yeah, it's one of those things where I'm definitely sure he was wishing that, there were no cameras there. I suspect. I know he said afterwards they were just playing around. It didn't look like that to me, but no worries. I mean, it's one of those things where I mean, it's trending, right? I learned about it because I went on to X / it'll always be Twitter to me, and in the process of went on there and I saw Macron was trending. So it's one of those things where I was like, wonder what's going on. He had talked about masonry a couple weeks ago, so I thought maybe he did another speech and he mentioned Freemasonry again. But no, it was him getting slapped. So I was like, ugh, not a huge fan of that. But not even whatever happened happened. I'm not a huge fan of it becoming kind of this weird like fodder. Canvas back Macron. I'm not sure what that means, but the French president Macron, I guess he got into, I guess his wife shoved him, or it looked like it was kind of like a shove to the face, and it became a very big thing on the news. All right, guys, thank you so much for being here. I hope that you guys are having a great day. Thank you again for being here. I'm going to end this stream. There will be a lot of stuff coming out in the next few days, though. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., there's going to be a new video released, as well as another live stream at 1 p.m. Eastern. I've got more stuff happening on my Patreon, so please make sure to stick around and stick around the channel, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We'll be back tomorrow. All right, guys, thank you so much.